All right, welcome in, guys. Josue Pavon at the Garden, Bobby Manning doing Bobby Manning things, and I am here, done watching the Patriots game because why bother? I have jumped on the Celtics bandwagon. Um,
Welcome aboard.
That's that's crazy that ended up being the fun game tonight.
oh my God! So I'll let you guys take this away. I've been watching as well, but why? I mean, good to hold off the Bulls. They were short. This was almost a loss, but they made clutch plays in the fourth late, played good defense in the fourth late, which is something you can't say of a lot of other games that they've had this year. So they didn't wilt. This was kind of
Yeah.
the opposite. They let it slip away from them a little bit,
Right.
but they made the plays late. So you got to give them credit for that. That was big. That was the big the way they closed it.
Yeah, you know what? I think you just nailed it, John. For Celtics fans out there, I mean, this is progress. It doesn't feel like it. I'm sure it doesn't because you're like, oh, deja vu, here we go in that fourth quarter. But at least if you compare this win to the others, it was one of the biggest things that I took away from it was that they didn't have to play uphill. Sure, the Bulls hung around. Sure, it wasn't comfortable throughout. It was
Right.
essentially the entire game. But the Celtics stayed ahead. And if not, they were – yeah, they lost the lead for a little bit there in the second half, but then they came right back, and it teetered back and forth. But they grind this one out. They
Right.
fought for this one in that fourth quarter.
Right. It
Bulls
had
went
the
on it.
makings. It had the makings of a really of a game that was going to piss you
Yeah,
off,
you-
right?
you
Because
Yeah,
come
they're
out
yeah,
of-
and that's why I felt like
the
deja
Bulls are
vu.
down. The Bulls are
Right.
down a ton of players, and this is a game you should have handily. And you're down 6, late in the fourth, and you're like, and again, that almost slipped away here for a team that should not have hung with you tonight. So this was
Right.
trending towards one of those get on the post game and start screaming about what's wrong. How could they lose to this team? So they won it. So good. They won it. Great. With plays from multiple people. Jason Tatum defense. Tatum was great with the blocks. Dennis Schroeder making a nice pass. That's not how
Schroeder
he
was
usually
awesome down the
Yes, hold on,
stretch.
Bobby,
That
hold on.
left-handed layup.
That's
I
not
was
how
gonna
he
say, let's keep
contributes.
up Bobby nice and let's keep it going here.
Rob Williams making 4 free throws. Like a lot.
Huge.
Like
Well,
that
that's what I
stuff
mean.
is all
Exactly,
right.
John. Like that's the kind of experience that these guys need, especially someone like Robert Williams. That's a
Something,
huge
right?
spot. That's a
Yeah.
huge
Should we start
spot.
with
To go
Rob?
4 for 4, pressure free throws, and then to pull it out. I think again, it's something that that experience they're gonna need that. These 5 in particular. I mean, maybe not Schroeder, but big picture wise, I think those 4 guys and Williams, Tatum, Brown. They need to go through these sort of these stretches, down the stretch where they need to come up with stops. That was the one thing I was thinking to myself, like, I didn't think that they would be able to pull it out because I was like, they haven't been able to put together 1, 2, 3 stops in a row, and that's exactly what they did in that fourth quarter.
I want to get to some of the gripes from this game, but let's start off positive because it's a win. Rob with 4 straight free throws late. He was,
Huge.
68% from the line coming into this one. Not a guy I've had a ton of confidence in that spot over the last couple of years here. I think he's officially now 66% on the season. I don't know if that's updated from tonight. Probably not. But huge spot. Just a ginormous pressure situation where this team and him in some regard too haven't been great. And he was just right down the middle in those spots. The first 2 kind of bounced around. The second 2 for the win essentially there were just right through. So he has certainly improved that. You've always liked the shooting stroke that he has, John. So there's certainly potential for him to be a better free throw shooter than he has been. But overall, his whole game, high post, inverted sets, give and goes with Brown. We're talking, let's say, 2 weeks of his best play of his career, like the longest stretch of consistent, awesome play from Rob ever.
Right. Like, it's funny, like Rob, like I love my analogies, but like I made the Neo one where like he's still discovering he's the one and he doesn't know. And like, he's got all these tools he can unlock. And that another one I always think of is like Will Ferrell in Old School when he goes in the trance, during the debate and says all of this stuff he didn't know. Like, I do think if Rob like has these weird,
You're
like,
talking about the therapy session?
No. When he's doing the debate thing.
Yeah, that's right. At the end. Yeah, okay, gotcha.
And he's like, oh, what happened? Like Rob has these moments where he does this stuff and you're like, where did that come from? And like even early in the first quarter, he had that little, that he catches a pass and he's like, okay, dribble and like a little floater in the lane. I'm like, that's just a that's a crazy touch shot, and like that takes a lot of like feel, and it's just not something every big can like pull out of their bag. I think he's got stuff there. He just hasn't really harnessed it, and he just isn't, so it's a matter of just unlocking some of that stuff. But he was great.
No,
Yeah,
I'm
you
glad you
saw
mentioned
some
that
big to
because
big passing in this one too.
one of
And he
those
made great passing when he comes up high. He had that great backdoor to Jalen.
No, but I'm more into him going the other way, right? Like putting when he has his back to the basket and he's facing the basket and he'll turn. That was driving us crazy a month ago. This time around,
little
I
bit.
want to say it was the first personal foul where he caught it, gathered himself, and he didn't turn his back to look to make a pass. He went straight up with it and got him to the free throw line and earned that the hard way. I think that was part of his game, his offensive game, that was driving me crazy this past month. But he didn't even hesitate on that play. With less than a minute left in the game, that's a huge spot. You want to see more of that, from Rob, late in games.
And having the bonus there on the Vucevic foul is them going downhill a ton in this game, shooting almost all their first shot baskets at the rim. They got away from that a little bit in the second half, but overall they were pretty aggressive in this game, going at the smaller Chicago wings. The Bulls are pretty much out all of their defensive wings, and certainly their two good players with size there in Ball and Levine. So they were missing a ton defensively, and the Celtics took advantage of it. They went to the rim time and time again. It was a great game to do the splits with the big men and have the ball in their hands. So you got a ton out of that. You certainly took it to them early and set a tone in this game. You held a lead for large stretches, like Josue said. They were going to make their run. They shoot 8 of 13 for that stretch where they took the lead from 3. They were just knocking down everything. Ayo Dosunmu was unbelievable. This is a good win. This is a rock solid win, even though you're supposed to beat this team and blah, 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 blah. You played well for most of it. You nearly blew it with some key miscues in the fourth, but you got up on your feet. You had that bonus late, and you take advantage of a big break there on the foul call and walk out of here without even needing to run a late game set. And they had to get a pair of stops there after that too. A good one on Vucevic. He got a decent look, and then you get the follow on DeRozan there. So execution just getting better. A win like the Pacers won a week ago, a win like this one, when you're getting to practice these situations again, John, it's great, right? Like, this is where they're stumbling, and it feels like every single night they're getting a chance to practice this. They're not practicing. They're not doing shoot-arounds. It's tough to replicate these situations, so it's great that even against a bad team, you're being in these spots over and over again. You'd rather have this than a blowout win over one of these teams. You'd feel better about a blowout and just taking it to them. But we know this team's not.
They've got to start. They have to start winning some tight, close games. So yeah, you'll take this. You'll take the Pacers for sure. I had a blowout again, guys.
There goes John.
Yeah, no, that's a good point, Bobby, because that's where you face those challenges that you're not going to see every single night, and how you respond obviously is a reflection of progress. And I think this is one of those, in particular, fourth quarter, where you can say the Celtics, they survived that, and that's a good thing. Obviously that huge run by the Bulls is not ideal, especially when you consider how well this team's been playing defensively. I mean, they give up 22 points in the first 6-7 minutes of that fourth quarter. I mean, that wasn't what Chicago was able to do throughout the entire game, but you got the sense that they were going to just completely take over. But the Celtics, they fought back, and of course Tatum had a lot to do with that. But again, those 3 consecutive stops, I thought were huge, especially when you got guys like Vucevic and DeMar DeRozan. When DeRozan was coming downhill, and he was lining it up in that second half, and so was their other shooters as well. And while the Celtics were trying to stop the bleeding, they were able to execute on the other end, offensively.
I'm sure we'll check where Dosunmu got drafted by the end of the night and see if they had a shot there. But
apparently, if you combine the 2 outings against the Celtics, he's like money. I think he's
15 to 16. I think is the number.
Yeah, 15 to
16 against the Celtics this year.
That's insane. I've never heard of such a thing.
I don't think
so. Many guys have career shooting games against the Celtics, huh?
And guys like him too. We've talked about that. He's deep off Chicago's bench. He's a good player. He's had a solid year.
That's why.
I do want to let me while you guys continue on here, I just want to make one programming note. Patriots game is over. If you happen to be joining us just now,
someone asked if the Bills just scored. This game's still going.
47-17. Game is over.
Oh,
I'll remind everyone we do have a post-game show coming up. Evan Lazar is in Buffalo. He's going to go grab some post-game stuff. My guess is around 11:45. About 30 minutes from now, we'll be jumping up, doing a post-game show. So you can literally probably, this show finishes up, jump right over to Patriots. If you're interested in a game postmortem and a season postmortem, I got to pay my bills, apparently. I got to pay my light bills.
yeah. You'll be getting
It's
that on the CLNS Media
It's
YouTube
the
page.
light.
Get
It's
over
not
there.
that. Yeah. So again, I gotta fix my issues here. I'll be right
They
back.
almost dropped
But yeah,
50. Jeez.
it was a bad game,
You,
man, and we'll
you
talk about all of it.
you knew from the first drive,
Oh,
and then
bad.
they'll get to it, but that was horrid. And it allowed me to watch much more Celtics tonight, which was good because this ended up being a game that you had to watch a lot of, another close game throughout.
Yeah, I don't
I'm
think most fans
gonna
were switching over. Well,
let's
they
let's keep
did, but then they went back.
yeah. I'm interested to hear actually in the chat what people were watching. I don't know how long people held out hope on the Pats. I was probably like hanging in till halftime, and then the score after halftime, it was clearly over at that
Well,
point.
I was cracking up when they I think the Bills when they scored, what was it? I think it was when they were up by, what was it, 33 or whatever. Around this, was there like a delay or something? Soon as the Pats fans went to the Celtics to check on the Celtics, they had just given up the lead and they were down by 6. They're like, oh, here we go. It was like early the fourth quarter when Ime took that timeout, and that was the exact moment most Patriots fans were switching over. Like, oh, here we go.
This is the new era of the Pats. You
Yeah,
can
right.
get punked and sent home on wild card weekend. I thought I heard too that this was the first wild card year for the Pats under Bill, which I guess it is, right? Yeah, they always won the division all those years, and then the year they didn't, they missed the playoffs. So here's life for the immediate future here. Just a brutal end to that season. But I do want to keep keying in on crunch time here because they're down 6. It's 3:33 to go. DeRozan hits those free throws, and they call a timeout. And I guess we'll key in on Tatum in his game now. This is probably a good time to take it over because he didn't do much down the stretch. It was more Brown, Rob, and Richardson with some spot makes late. Schroeder, outstanding too. I'll give it to him. Like, in terms of shot making and just willing them back into it when you go down 6 there, he was the one who started attacking because Tatum, turnover after a timeout, playing in a crowd, throwing into the backcourt, charging into a guy named Hill, who I don't really know. I know most of the players in the league. I don't know
That was an
him.
easy call to make too. He plowed right into him.
On the second chance that Richardson got him. Yep. So then from there on, they get away from Tatum. Brown's got the ball in his hands. Schroeder's got the ball in his hands, and it worked from there. Schroeder gets the alley-oop to Rob, his 7th assist. The nice left-handed layup that was really difficult. And Brown ends up getting a shot on the inbounds after the nice stop that they got blocked out in transition there from Schroeder again. So Schroeder, Rob, Brown making it happen, and Tatum largely disappears down the stretch, at least offensively.
Let me ask you guys, there's some cases where Tatum's getting his shots and they're not falling, and we've seen stretches of that. Is he appear that he's not getting the shots he wants, or what's happening? Like, he's definitely struggling on the tweeners when he's trying to get to the basket. He doesn't get all the way there, and he has to put up some sort of kind of in between awkward shot. He's not finishing those at all. He's definitely missing some open looks with his threes. I mean, he had a couple early in the first half, just dead eye looks. He had one from the elbow, from the,
He
from
had
the
all
break,
time to take
that he literally was like left, right all day and still doesn't. So the stroke's still not pure, but is he not getting to his spots where he wants to be operating and to be doing the stuff that he wants to do? Like, what's behind a night like this? Because it looked like he was kind of in a flow early, and you're like, this could be a good Tatum night. But then you look at the box score at halftime, it was 6 for 15. It felt like he was better than that. I was like, oh, that's not great. And then it just kind of, it continued from there. 2 for 9 second half, really not able to create much and do much at all offensively in the second half.
Yeah, he got to 15 really.
Yeah.
No, I was just going to say, he got to 15 really quickly in that first half. And yeah, I agree with you. You got the sense that he was going to have one of those games where he puts up, 30, 40 points.
Felt like it, right?
Yeah, it did. But I feel like Chicago made adjustments on defense. I mean, with Tatum, we've been saying this throughout, especially the first couple of seasons of his career.
He was seeing the doubles again. Yeah.
Yeah, well, yeah, he's seen the doubles and getting out of them quickly. And remember, he used to get, go run to the corner. Well, he stopped doing that. But it's been one of those, take a very contested 3-pointer or try to plow through the lane and give up one of those floaters, or you're going to give up another charge. I know his mid-range game isn't something that we sort of kept an eye on, but I think that's really what it is. I mean, he's just not comfortable in, or at least the opposing defenses kind of knock him off a bit. And I think that they made better adjustments for the second half after they saw that he was approaching 20 points so quickly.
Yeah. Second quarter, he was 0 for 6 after that hot, and taking a few more jump shots. I think only one shot at the basket after that. Yeah. He, more than anyone, I thought, got away from what was working so well early, the mismatches and getting downhill against smaller guys. Third quarter, one look at the basket. Fourth quarter, in the end.
The question is, was he able to stay loose coming out of the game or not? Maybe he went back in and he was cold. Josue, was he pedaling? Was he on that bike? Was he staying loose?
The bike watch continues.
Is that a serious question? Of course he was. Of course he was. And you know what, too? I was going to point this out during the group chat, but he wasn't there as long as Tatum usually is. But I think Al was over there for a little bit.
Yeah, Al got on the bike?
Everyone's doing it.
Well, it was in the fourth quarter, and I'm thinking maybe Ime wanted him to stay loose just in case. But, of course, he never checked back into the game. So I think it was one of those, in case we go to overtime or in case I need you down the stretch, loosen up a bit. So
is it too much biking or not enough biking? Did Al take valuable bike time away from Tatum, and that's why he didn't have a good second half?
No, I don't think that was it.
No? All right.
But it did crack me up because as soon as the Celtics called a timeout.
Stay on it, Josue. That's what we send you down there for.
As soon as the Celtics called a timeout, though, he jumped off and went to run into the huddle. Like, I can't miss any of this. Like, then that's Al. That's the kind of leader he is. But it was just funny to see him and Tatum switch roles there with the bike approach.
Yeah. Al with his best game in for a month too.
Al absolutely came to life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we'll get to that.
Hey, look who else you got here.
Sherrod.
We will welcome
Sherrod. More fun. Yeah, Sherrod. The Patriots pissed me off so bad. I jumped on Celtics.
Man, crystal clear.
You got us.
I got you.
Look at that view.
I like this camera. Look at this. She's shining right now. Check you out.
Hey, I'm trying to distract people from the ass kicking at the Patriots, guys. So I thought I was just going to change up my background a little bit here.
That's why I'm here. I couldn't watch anymore, Sherrod. I wasn't going to do the show because I'm doing Patriots later.
Now the viewers feel like they're kicking in the stands with that's a great.
Listen,
view.
All I know is the Patriots. I blinked and they were down 2 touchdowns, and then I checked back at halftime and it was the largest deficit that they've ever had in a playoff game in franchise history. So I'm thinking like, shit. We got to do something different for the post game so the people will just kind of distract.
Sherrod, are you near the bike right now?
He kind of is. He's not too far.
I'm not too far from the bike. I think the bike has been put away for the night.
All right.
They don't want anyone.
I can use the bike right now. I can use the bike right about now, man. This was a weird game.
They're gonna get the bike lock for it.
Sherrod, what are your thoughts? Because like I said, is undermanned Chicago. Celtics looked like they were about to blow it, and then pulled it together late, which we haven't seen much of. But you're right, kind of a weird game. What was your takeaway?
This was one of those games where if you're the Celtics, you really should have 2 takeaways from this game that you need to really hold on to. First of all, you won the game. That should be the big takeaway for you. Second, Chicago gave you the blueprint of what's supposed to happen when you got men out. They absolutely fought tooth and nail to the very end, and they've got like more than half of their regular rotation is out for this game, and yet they literally had this game won. I wanted to I don't know if you guys saw, but before the game, Billy Donovan talked about just kind of looking ahead to this game, and he said something, and I wrote about this on fullcourtpressbulletin.com. He said, "We may not have enough tonight, but you want to be able to walk off that court and know you competed at a level and control the things you can control. If you are the Boston Celtics, that needs to be put smack dab in front of every player's locker room for the rest of the season, because that's what you have to do in the days and times that we live in right now. In the NBA. You can't. There's only so much you can control. That's all you need to worry about, because that other stuff, you can't control who goes in and out of health and safety protocol. You can't control who slips on a banana peel on the way to practice and is out for a week. All you can control is the effort that you put forth when you step between those lines. And I thought Chicago, for the most part, did a much better job of that tonight than the Boston Celtics did. But give the Celtics credit. Down the stretch, they got all the big plays, and it wasn't just the Jays. I mean, Time Lord, had timely free throws, timely plays defensively, got them to win. Al Horford had maybe the best games he's had probably in a month or so. You start going down the line, and guys did different things here and there. But the one thing, again, that I thought Chicago did a much better job of, which is why they were in the game and really were in position to win it, was their effort. They played, I thought, harder for the most part than the Celtics. The Celtics, great in the last 2.5 minutes, but overall, I just thought Chicago played a much
Second
harder,
half.
gritty game.
Second half, Chicago was better by far. You know, the Celtics built those big early leads, the massive advantage in the paint. You bringing up the coaches is a good spot there, Sherrod, because I found it interesting the way both coaches handled this game. Billy micromanaging things, calling timeouts a ton just to get them set up right. There was even a play where they got blocked and there was like 2 seconds left on the shot clock and they called a timeout to drop a play. You just saw how much he was taking for granted the fact that they were within a possession or two there and the fact that it could slip and they weren't going to let that distance increase there on a Celtics run. Ime getting pretty aggressive with it too. And I don't know how you felt about his kind of timeout run stopping this year, but it was the 30-second mark of the third quarter, right?
That was the best timeout he's called all year. That was such a Popovich.
What was the issue?
Well, I think they had just given up a basket, and I think he was sensing that was was going to be the precipitous
open
of a
quarter
run.
3, but then they were in their offensive. They were running in action. It looked like, and then there was it looked like 2-3 people were in the same area. It must not just liked how the play looked or something. They were just so disorganized, or it just was. It looked like they were out of sync, and I think he. I wasn't sure if anybody knew for sure. It just looked like they were maybe a little out of sorts, and he's like, no.
I was so happy to see that timeout call because again, when this is a team, we've seen them do this time and time again, where you can almost sense when they're about to be on the short end of a run, and I thought Ime did a good job of nipping that in the bud before it could get going. But again, you had a team in Chicago that really. There were stretches where you could clearly tell that they didn't know what the hell they were doing. At one point in the second half, you had all 5 Chicago Bulls players on one side of the floor. All 5. And DeRozan had the ball top of the key, and he looked to his left, and there was no one. And on the other side, all 4 guys were there. That's the kind of stuff that happens when you have a bunch of guys who aren't used to playing together, now all of a sudden having to play major minutes together. But again, I go back to the Celtics did what they needed to do to get the win, but they really need to take a page out of the Chicago Bulls playbook and understand that you need to come with elite effort so that you can compete at times of attrition, which is what they are going through to some extent, and the Bulls certainly to a much larger extent. Damn, is that the final? 47-17, is that the final?
That's what I said.
Damn.
I was like, they almost put on 50.
You know what though? It was this close to surpassing what I thought was going to be the greatest indignity ever suffered by a Patriots team in a playoff game, which was the Super Bowl 20 versus the Bears. I'm dating myself, obviously, but back in '85, actually the year '86, but the '85 season, 46-10. They were down 47-10 in this one before that late touchdown. So this close to being surpassed.
Wait,
there.
You mean that they actually scored to make it closer?
They scored to make it closer.
Oh, damn.
Yeah.
Damn.
Yeah, it was a rough day.
I need another.
Rough day for Pat.
I need another drink.
It was rough.
Back to you joked about this, John. I want to stick on the timeouts for a second and just the coaching here because we haven't talked a ton about this in depth. I think you joked earlier that Ime should save all his timeouts for the fourth quarter and just calm as things are spiraling there.
Yeah, and so every minute or two, like as soon as it's like what he did in the third, I would like to see in the fourth sometimes when you start to see it go south early, like bang, and then another one, nope, bang, but
like almost a one possession slipping off like a 10 or whatever it is there. Yeah, you got to start.
Don't let it spiral. Ounce of ounce of prevention, pound of cure sort of thing. Like get out in front of it. If you see something you don't like, they start to like get lazy. Jack a 3 early in the clock with no movement. Nope, don't like it. Timeout.
Yeah, and I found it interesting what he said in New York last week about not wanting to micromanage the situations and calling plays and killing the momentum or, however you put it there, essentially. What we've come to learn from him is that he's not going to be the one drawing up a play every time out, setting them up in sets. Like he wants this to kind of be free flowing and allow them to create their own structure there. I just wonder if it's too early for them to be able to do that, if they kind of need their handheld a little bit here early on. And it felt like they shifted a little bit toward being more of a micromanager here in this one. Even on the baseline out of bounds play there, Schroeder to Brown, I don't know if that was kind of just something that the players came up with there on the spot, or something that, Ime kind of signaled there. I just felt more of like his hand being placed over this game to prevent them from blowing it in the second half.
That's a good thing. That's a very good thing, particularly against a team like the Chicago Bulls tonight, who are so undermanned and just so right to get that ass whipped. And you have to get these wins. Every game matters, but these games really matter, not only in terms of improving your win-loss record, but also just kind of giving some of these guys confidence. I thought Peyton Pritchard had a good game. I thought he did a lot of really good things out there, not just shot making. I know he had the 1-3 ball that he hit that put them up 4 when they had just had the 1-point lead, but I just thought that his confidence overall looked on a different level.
He takes some tough shots.
Well, he takes tough shots, and I'm not as concerned about whether he makes them or not. I just want him to get comfortable taking those shots, and it seems that he's trending in the right direction in regards to that. And again, this was again. Celtics, they did a lot of great things down the stretch. I just wish that they could figure out a way to bring that elite level of competition in the face of attrition the way the Chicago Bulls did. Because the Bulls, when you look at their roster and you look at just who they had available and who they didn't, they should have got that ass whooped by 20. This should have been a 20-point loss. But I don't blame it so much necessarily on what the Celtics didn't do, but I blame it more on the fact that Chicago came ready to compete, and they weren't just giving lip service. And again, I read you that quote from Billy Donovan before the game. Clearly, the message that he sent to his guys was that I don't really give a damn whether we win or lost, but you damn well better compete. I don't know if that message is getting through in the green team's locker room. I don't know if they're hearing that. I don't know if they're feeling that we may not win or lose a game, but damn, we need to at least be ready to compete from beginning to end, because we don't see that. We just don't see that.
And I think that's a big reason why Ime didn't sort of bail these guys out, right? He didn't go deep into his bench. He didn't go, pull the guys when he didn't like what they were having. He's like, no, you guys need to figure this out in that fourth quarter, And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that a lot of what Sherrod just said, a lot of the all-stars in this team weren't available. Guys were out for the Chicago Bulls, and here you are. Yeah, you held a lead steady throughout the first three quarters or so, but it still wasn't comfortable enough for you to hold on to it, right? I mean, they had to really fight, and Ime wanted them to fight, I feel like, especially in the last 3 minutes. Okay, here you go. It's a 2-possession game. You're down by 6. How are you going to handle this? Because it's going to take you 2-3 consecutive stops just to even give yourself a fighting chance. And the Celtics did that and more. And someone like Robert Williams, going 4 for 4 from the free throw line with all that pressure and this crowd behind him.
See how those free throws looked a lot better after the first 2 hit damn near every part of the rim, and then and the second 2 all net. So clearly,
4 in a row from a guy who's been really shaky in his career is pretty impressive.
You could see how happy he was too when he nailed it. When he nailed that second one, he was like, got it. Like he knew it was a big moment. He really wanted to hit him, and for splash. Good looking stroke, nothing but net on those 2 that gave him the lead and the eventual difference. Yeah.
You know what I think that is, John?
How many he's taken.
Yeah.
I think that's Robert saying, I do this all day in practice. Now I did it here. Let's go. You know what I mean? Like I knew I could do it. Again, I feel like he's just like a release. Like let's go.
You see bigs with funky releases, and you see them fighting the ball. Even Giannis, like the amount of focus and concentration it took for him, to get free throws. He knows, I don't feel right here, and I'm trying to get it. But Rob actually looks kind of smooth. I think it's in there. It's just
he was just born to play this game.
Yeah.
Everything's preset for him to be a great player. It's just there, and he's just got to fine tune it, become consistent, healthy, and work around the edges. Because the leaping ability, the outstanding length,
it's gotten silly, right? And can we go back? It's obvious again in the beginning of the year when we were saying Rob doesn't look right. I mean, we do see the obvious difference now, right? When he's clearly got his legs under him. He did not at the beginning of the year.
I'd say there's a difference,
a monster difference. He's jumping and the ball's over here and he's catching it. It doesn't
He's been getting
matter.
that one hand down. Yeah.
It doesn't matter where you throw it. he's catching it behind him, to the side, to the left, with left hand. It doesn't matter. It's literally automatic right now. It really is something most people cannot do. You can basically put that ball up there anywhere and he's going to go get it. It's unreal right now.
Right.
And that's, again, just the thing that comes natural to him. That's not even, I mean, he has so many things you think he might be able to develop,
And we're not even talking about, and we're not even talking about when he's, when he's not playing above the rim. I mean, 6 dimes from your center.
Love it.
And again, he's just such the potential for him to be a complete all-around player is so apparent. I mean, you look at Vucevic tonight, and we talk about some of the bigs in the East. Obviously, Joel Embiid is at the head of the table, clearly. But then you look at Vucevic, you look at Sabonis in Indiana, and you look at where Rob's at, and he's younger than all of those guys. And yet, when you look at the skill set, there really isn't this huge – well, Joel Embiid, there's a huge gap between him and everyone. But when you look at the passing, the scoring, playing above the rim, Rob is trending to being in that conversation with those guys. It's just a matter of him being more consistent and, to be frank and to be candid, getting an opportunity to do what he does well. I don't think the Celtics and the Jays do as good a job as they can putting him in position to help them be great. Because that's the thing about this team that kind of kills me. I think Rob could be such a central figure in making all the guys around him better if you give him that opportunity to be that guy, which I don't think he's getting with any kind of consistency.
The passing's so natural too. Like, you just give it to him, let him touch the ball, and they're starting to do this earlier in games too. You look at the first 5-6 possessions of this game, it's kind of Brown, Tatum bouncing between him and the high post there. Just letting him get a touch, a feel for it, because he makes such quick decisions. He doesn't need to read the ball.
Exactly. The quick decisions, Bobby, right. Yeah, the quick decisions. That's what the really good playmakers do. They don't spend time lollygagging around. Shit out. They just make the damn play.
So that's the thing is, like, when we talk about it, I'm not trying to turn it into a referendum of Jalen and Tatum, but we talk about what comes natural to people. Rob, despite the fact that he's not asked to do it a lot, is a natural passer. It's clear. As for the things that you mentioned, he makes quick decisions. He sees it fast. He zips it right there. It's usually on the money. He's got it in him. He really makes good. He finds the lanes. His passes don't very often get deflected. And then you see other guys, and they're just not. And the timing of it is really everything. It's almost like a quarterback. You wait a beat too long, and you miss your window. And that's what it is with passing a lot of times too. If you don't recognize it or anticipate the opportunity, you're not going to make the play. And Jalen and Jason are a lot of those times they're driving, and then they'll look up and say, is there something to be made, as opposed to seeing the whole thing develop as they're going, which is, I've got this guy going, and if he comes and if he cheats, I've got this over here, or I've got that over there. You've almost got to see your options. So it isn't natural as much for them, and it really is for Rob. So you do want to see the ball in his hand sometime.
Yeah, and I don't know if you guys talked about it before, but quick shout out to Dennis Schroeder for actually looking and playing quarterback, sort of kind of like a point guard tonight. 8 assists, only 1 turnover. I didn't see that coming.
I'm glad someone else brought up Schroeder, because I didn't think I was allowed to.
I just wanted to make sure that we had a little bit of a
I thought it was okay to talk about him. I thought we could only talk about him when he had bad games.
Big Rondo out there.
He was good, man.
Go ahead, Bobby. Put up the Schroeder graphic. I know you got one.
We're gonna dig for it. It's deep in there.
Yeah, he's typing it out right now.
He wasn't even gonna put it in there.
Let's get the duster off here to dust that off. He was good though. I mean, obviously he still drives me nuts with dribbling the damn ball too much, but he was a little bit quicker in his decision making, I thought, tonight, and overall had a much better. Had one of his more solid games in terms of not only scoring but also getting his teammates involved.
8 assists, 1 turnover, a team high plus 14, only 9 shots. Yet Bobby still found something negative to tweet about him tonight.
In the first half, yeah.
In the first half, he's like, "Did you see that play?" I'm like, he almost pitched a perfect game for Dennis Schroeder,
Meanwhile, the Patrick
Bobby's like, when he gave up 2 hits, John,
it's like getting mad at him.
And John just flips out on the group chat.
It's getting mad at a pitcher for throwing.
He didn't realize there was a string of Pritchard plays. I talked about.
He did. He dogged Pritchard earlier, and I missed it. That was
Pritchard a -12.
Put up the Schroeder graphic, coward.
I fired up a picture graphic. I got no use for it.
Don't pretend you didn't hear me earlier. Put that up.
There's a value to
Schroeder will
There
go on a
is.
string of like
I mean,
4
there's a
good
value to
games,
Schroeder.
and then he'll play a crap one on the 5th, and everyone will be like, Dennis is the problem, and it's gonna go.
No, if
Dennis,
he gets traded, that's
team-
what everyone's gonna say. If he gets traded, they're
Dennis-
like, oh, see, it opened up the gates for Pritchard. It's like, not quite.
Dennis, a team high
And the
plus
minute
14.
Pritchard has a bad game, it's gonna be like, oh, we shouldn't have got rid of Dennis. This is what happened. See,
this is why you keep veterans. That's exactly what's gonna happen.
Yeah,
Love
pretty
it.
It's
much.
great.
Love it.
When you're
Sorry,
able to
bro.
get him doing things that help you in a smaller role, 9 shots, passing primarily, overshooting, it's great. And you see down the crunch time, his ability to get a shot off, a tough shot too. That left-handed was really the moment of the last 4 minutes there. What sparked the run, essentially, I thought. There's a massive value to it. You can't deny it. And he's not a complete liability on defense. He can play next to Smart, and he can be a guy who competes on that end and plays hard on that end. He has a steal in this one. Listen, I'm tough on him when it's out of control and it's bad. And in this game, it's great, almost start to finish. And there's been other games like that this year, too. He has helped them immensely. There's no arguing that. I'm not one of the people on the far end of the spectrum who just think he stinks. If you think he stinks, I don't know what you're thinking, because this is a guy who can clearly put up 15, 16 in his sleep, pass, dribble, and do all the things you want out of your point guard spot. And they had so few options. I don't know the revisionist history about the offseason. Like, they could have gotten someone else, or they could have traded for someone. No, this was it, right? This was the only guy left on the market. Me and Sherrod were in Vegas.
That's the point. Yes.
Free agency was over, and you just got this golden option for $5 million.
That's the point.
Yeah.
The point is, it literally saved it. And again, it was a talent deficient team, and you added talent. You did not add the perfect player. He is not the perfect player. He is not necessarily the right fit, but it was somebody to come in here and every once in a while do the types of things that he does. That's it. It's not worth having the argument of what he isn't. If he was more than that, some team would have signed him before the Celtics scooped him off the scrap heap for $5 million. That's what you got.
Right.
You got an imperfect player who every once in a while will drive you friggin' bananas.
It's also something that they didn't have.
He's been doing that his entire career, right?
It's also a weapon that you didn't have last season. And you look at the backcourt, you look at the scoring, the production that we saw last season. Granted, Kemba wasn't Kemba. He was, he was so banged up that he was unreliable. But at least you had someone to sort of make up for that point production, right? And someone like Schroeder,
the key.
who isn't,
Yeah, you had.
He isn't the traditional point guard and trying to get everyone the ball, but he's going to give you points. He's going to give you offense.
Right, and you're always trying to add talent where you get the most bang for your buck. If you think about this, how many guys can you get at the price that you're paying Schroeder who can get you 15, 16, 17 points
Seriously,
a
in
game?
today's NBA.
Right, yeah. Because I had a conversation with Brad Stevens actually before the game, and we talked a little bit about the trade deadline coming up, and actually that is also on fullcourtpress.bulletin.com. And Brad, again, his approach is very similar to Danny Ainge's, which is not a surprise to anyone. And that gives me the sense that even though Brad wouldn't tip his hand, because no GM at this point tips their hand as what they're looking to do trade deadline wise, but I get the sense that he's going to follow a pattern that we've seen year in, year out that Danny has done, which is he's going to talk to a lot of people. He's not going to see a deal that feels as though they're going to be, really getting significant bang for their buck, and they're just going to take a pass and try to get something done in the summer. I think, to be honest with you, I think that of all the different paths that you can take, you're not going to make a deal to become a championship contender this year. So you need to make a decision as to whether you want to develop the young guys like Peyton Pritchard and Neesmith and those guys, and develop meaning play them in real NBA games and get their asses kicked, and hopefully they learn from that, or you just try to ride this thing out with the guys that you have. And just see where things take off. Give Ime a chance to have the best talent at his disposal as possible to give him the best chance of winning games. They have to figure out where they're going. What's the sweet spot between now and the trade deadline? But I would not be shocked if the trade deadline comes and passes and they do little if anything. Whereas come off season they look to do something a little bit more substantial and significant.
Well, Dennis is still the one, right? You got to address that
Yeah.
somehow. If he's still here, you're probably thinking they feel they have some chance to keep him, right? Or do you just play it out, and if you lose him, you lose him? I don't love that idea of that. I guess the cost versus what you're losing there isn't great at the end of the day. You get a full season of him, and if he moves on, he moves on. I would
Yeah.
like to see some kind of resolution to that, though.
I just
Either he's part of the team going forward, or he's
Listen, if
not.
you're trying to get something of value for Dennis, you know what that is? That's just being freaking greedy because you got him at a ridiculously discounted rate. So for him to leave and you not get anything in return, it's not like you had this huge ass investment in him for years.
But if you get if you get 2 second-round picks, and you roll your eyes, they're second-round
yeah,
picks, but it's
that's
something you
fine.
can use. You've given up
That's
a million of them.
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. If you can get something like that, then great, do that. But there shouldn't be this feeling as though, gosh, they're going to give us 2 second-round picks, but damn, we got to take back this contract that has like 2 years on it after this one of a guy that we don't really like. Those are the kind of deals that will just make you cringe if you're the Celtics fan because they impact you both in the short and long term and not in a good way. The only way I'm moving Dennis is if you're getting either a late first-round pick, which has some conditions, a couple of second-round
first round pick.
Well,
First round pick,
done.
you're like taking
Yeah.
taking the Uber XL to Logan Airport. It's that is like
Shit,
done.
I'm not even gonna wait. I'm not even waiting for the Uber. I'm gonna put his ass in the car and take him to my dad's house. I'm not waiting for Uber. But reality, if you can't get something of decent value, whether it's multiple draft picks in the second round or a first round pick, it really doesn't make a ton of sense to move him. Especially if you can figure out ways like this to get him on the floor and get Pritchard some decent.
That's my point. Yeah, like I said, I don't see what you're getting by giving him away for next to nothing. So to me, it's either right if you're getting second round picks, ride it out and stay with the player, or if you've decided you're going into not quite tank but stripped down mode and you want to shed some parts and shed some salaries and play the kids, I'm not gonna complain about that either. Just make a choice. If you're trying to win games, you're better with Dennis. If you get a first round pick, you can't pass up that opportunity. So decide what you want to be. If you're trying to win, you're better keeping him here.
Right.
There's no question about it.
Path to winning for them so tricky though. You feel good about a night like this, and when
here's
they start
the thing.
playing together, but
I don't feel good about it tonight.
But it comes down to this: like the circular debate we're going to continue to have is: do the Jays not have enough help, and that's why they're struggling right now, or do they just simply need to elevate their games? And if they did, we wouldn't be pointing to all the other problems as big of problems, which is Jason Tatum's just shooting horribly this year. Jason Tatum is not playing at his best. Is that because he's just having a rough year, or is it at the fault of everyone around him that there's just too much attention going his way? There's all these double teams. There's not enough floor spacers. People don't respect anything else on the team, so they can put all their attention, pack the lane. He can't get where he wants to go.
You got that Embiid quote, John. The book's out on them.
The book's out, and it has been since last year. When Goodman goes in a locker room, gets those quotes, throws them out there. Everyone calls him a hater, but basically every single team you face says the book's out on them. They're going to ISO. This is before Schroeder got here. The Jays are going to ISO. They're not going to kick it out. They're not going to move it to other people. You don't have to respect anyone else on their team. They're really easy to load up on. It's this slow, deliberate offense, so they're easy to defend. So, yes, the extra attention they're getting in the fact. Yeah,
that was from the Warriors locker room.
Yeah, exactly. And you know it. Whatever. You were there. So the book's out. Ime says it about. Ime said it when he took the job. We're too ISO heavy. We don't pass enough. Our assist rate is really low. I want to change that. You have opponents say it. National media says it. But for some reason, we can't fully acknowledge it. The question is it fixable from within, or do you have to gut the roster and go just get a whole bunch of new stuff? Or is it just simply all of a sudden it starts to fall for Tatum, and then you're like, great, you can you could be an ISO heavy team if Tatum is scoring like he was, pre-bubble and post All-Star break that year.
But he's never been a good ISO player. That's never been the way
that year.
Yes,
but he's not right. But I mean, but he
had some heck of a, he had a lot different weapons around him. But that's beside the point. I guess what I was gonna say is, like, I think when you look at the roster and you think and you consider what's going on with Ime and his coaching system, and these are systemic changes that are going to take a bit. But I think one of the biggest differences is going to be whether it's the near future or whether Brad's able to put together some sort of trade before the deadline. Is that maybe these guys are going to see the difference when they have better weapons around them, and they're going to say, oh, okay, so this is, you know what I mean. You enhance those weapons around those guys, and then the system stays the same, and they're getting better at it, and you're hoping that whatever deals that you can make to enhance this roster is going to be enough to make it a championship contender. But I'm not quite sure that happens this year. But whether or not that that comes to fruition, they have to continue to show that they can make guys around them better, that they can enhance players that wouldn't be enhanced elsewhere. And I think that's just something that we still have to figure out that they can do consistently, regardless of who's around them. Enhance their team.
And they haven't even scratched the surface of that.
They're the two best
But they're
players on
not.
the team. And
What's funny is
they're supposed to be elevating their game,
But what's funny is we're not even asking when we talk about like moving the ball and making quicker decisions. No one's actually asking Tatum to get 8 to 10 assists a game. They're just simply saying, move the ball more, get into some actions, move off the ball, and when you get the ball back, you might be in a more advantageous position to score than if the point guard hands it to you at half court when he crosses half court, and then you set up and you get really deliberate and everyone clears out, and the defense sets and is sitting there waiting for you. They're waiting to double, they're waiting to collapse. There's people they're packing the paint. That sucks. That offense sucks. So commit to moving it and moving your body and getting to places. So when you get it back, you're in a better position than ISOing 50 feet away from the basket, which makes no sense to me. That's all people are asking. They're not asking them to be point forwards, right?
I think that's what drives us crazy, especially in that first half, right? Look at the second quarter. I felt like the Bulls made their adjustments, and the Celtics were trying to pick up their offense, which I thought, that helped them throughout the first. But you're losing something on the defensive end, like this whole fast break style and up pay. When it's rocking, it looks good, which is exactly what we saw in that first quarter throughout that run. And then you see that slippage on the defensive end, and then they can't defend in transition. They start to they're like a step behind, and maybe that's the result of this being on the second night of a back-to-back. Coming from the road, but in that fourth quarter, they showed the right enough of mental toughness to get through it, to power through and make the right decision. So we know it's there.
I like what you both said, to getting off the ball to get it back to yourself. I think that's a huge part of what they need to do and what they've done when they've been at their best. I mean, Rob threw a lob to Tatum in this one. That was unbelievable. This was just a great example of what you can do if you're both those players, if you get on the ball when they were at their best in this one. And just the shot selection of this team early. It was great to see them shooting a ton in the paint. And even if you look at the shot chart, you pull it up at NBA.com for anyone. This was just all paint touches. The threes ramped up a little bit in the second half, but early on, you weren't shooting many threes. You were just doing everything around the paint.
It was so beautiful.
You know what? One of my favorite stats that they put on the broadcast tonight was, it had nothing to do with the Celtics. It was the Chicago Bulls lead the league in 3-point percentage and bottom of the league in 3-pointers attempted. Mwah, beautiful. Do that.
And that's what they did early.
And
it was
you know what?
2 for 5.
Shoot it when it's a good shot. Don't just say everyone's shooting 3, so let's shoot 50.
No, Chicago. You can watch the guys that they got out there now and see why they're the best team in the East. The ball movement, guys moving without the ball, getting the spots.
So when you take the 3, it's a good shot.
It's a good shot. Exactly. It's literally the best shot that you could get in that particular set.
And that's the antidote to having no shooting. You don't just keep shooting and shooting and shooting and saying, oh, the shots haven't been there all year, like Ime keeps saying. It's like, all right, look at the roster you have. There's no shooting here. So you're not going to be a team that should shoot a lot of threes.
And that's why you move the ball. Like it's like you're working for better shots. That's the point of it.
You're a really good team at the rim. Rob's percentage, Brown's percentage.
The hardest thing to do is to score 1-on-5. Like, why do you opt for that? You move the ball and you move yourself constantly to get in a better position.
And there are teams. Listen, you got to shoot threes in today's league. You can't take 10 in a game. You're going to be at such a big disadvantage. But there are teams relative to others who take much less. Miami, you look at what they do. It's mid-rangers, it's at the basket, it's cutting, it's all that different kind of thing. Chicago, look at DeRozan's game, what he's been doing to drive them. Very little of it is three-point shooting, like John said there. So you can make yourself a team identity-wise that de-emphasizes threes, emphasize them for the guys that can hit them, like get Tatum and Brown secondary looks from those spots, but drive and kick to Grant, drive and kick to Richardson, to Schroeder, swinging along the perimeter. That's just not a style you can play because you don't have the personnel. And they're starting to figure that out a little bit, I think.
Yeah, and to John's point about Chicago, to John's point about the Bulls, I mean, think about it. They're dead last in three-point attempts, and they take 30 a game. They take 30. They're the worst at launching threes, and they take 30 a game. So it has to be part of your package, but it doesn't have to be the damn entree.
Yeah.
It does not have to be the main course that you're serving up every night. Chicago Bulls are a great example of how you can still make it part of the meal, but it doesn't have to be the main course.
Exactly. And that's
They're
it.
a good team. They're a really good team.
They're good,
They
man.
are.
And
I
again,
think they're who you want to see, though, based on tonight. If you pick,
I don't know how you
could
could come to that conclusion when you played them without Levine and Ball, man. We were talking about it on the thread. I mean, this team can be so much more dynamic and explosive and athletic.
They can, but you're the same kind of team. You play with them. You play that side.
I don't want to. If I'm seeing them, I see them second round or maybe conference finals. You don't see them out the gate.
Well, who are you picking over them? Brooklyn, Milwaukee, Philly.
I would take. Philly. I would take over them. Brooklyn, you just never know what the hell you're gonna deal with there with Kyrie on the road and all that other kerfuffle.
Embiid's why I don't want to see Philly. Listen, DeRozan's a great player. If he's your best player, that's who I want to see on the other side.
He's not your best player.
He's not your best player. That's
Zach LaVine is your best player, and he's
he's
playing at a higher level than both Tatum and Brown, and he has been for over a year. So
and they have a big man who can stretch the floor.
But he's not a defensive anchor.
They have four high-end talented
They're a great
players.
team. But listen, I'm not knocking Chicago. I'm saying they're not the Nets that they lost. They gave up like a 40-9.
The only reason they're not is because they're new and they haven't fully arrived yet. But and because you're not used to them there yet. They might be. Maybe they don't do it this year. But they could. They
don't
good,
have the
man.
kind of talent of those other teams, but I do believe
that's
that they're more of a team. They're more of a team than those other teams.
They're more of a team.
They have more talent. These guys are more. I think this talent. They're more of a team.
I think they have plenty of talent too.
You got a second round pick, the kid DeSummer, who's really good.
They are. Listen. This is the brutal position you're in when we talk about trying to win. You in the first round is the 7 or 8 seed because this is going to be a play-in team. So you're the 7 or 8 seed. You're picking between Chicago and Brooklyn. And you look at those two teams when they're fully loaded, and it's not even close. You step in their series against Brooklyn, and you are not even sniffing a win.
I think the Nets and the Bucks are on a different level, but I think the Chicago is much closer to that. Chicago's much closer to the top than they are to the middle of the pack. There's a chance.
Chicago's the only team you could get lucky against, or at least compete for a longer stretch.
Yeah, Miami scares the hell out of me too. But I mean, again, you're pointing out what Chicago has. I see some people saying in the chat, Chicago has no bench. The Celtics have no bench. Okay, guys.
Yeah,
so
well, you know what though? Here's the funny thing about Chicago's bench. We just saw Chicago's bench.
Yes,
what are we talking about?
Chicago's bench just took the Celtics to the brink of defeat.
I know.
Their bench is what we saw.
And you're missing Javonte Green, who's been good this year, as well as Derek Jones. So, yeah, they were brutally undermanned in
We're not even talking – and don't forget about Caruso, who I think is
Caruso's been great.
And a really good defensive player who will annoy
and some kid in Lonzo Ball who I think is pretty good too.
They were missing 5 rotation guys in this one. Who knows what they do with Patrick Williams, who they could trade.
Exactly with the risk. Right.
Very quickly, guys, I just want to give a heads up. Little programming note again. Patriots Postgame is going to be coming up shortly. It'll be on this channel after this show is over, but also over on Patriots Press Pass. So if you haven't subscribed, you want some Patriots content, head over there. Bill Belichick is at the podium now. They're really slow rolling this. They've been really slow getting to the podium after this loss. Haven't heard from Bill and Mac, but Evan Lazar is in there covering the post-game press conferences. We will have post-game on this channel right after, as soon as the interviews wrap up. My guess is another 5 or 10 minutes or so. So that's all I wanted to say for that one.
Celtics win the fourth quarter, 30-29. There you go.
And the way that started off, you didn't think that was going to happen.
Yeah, guys,
You
I'm gonna
needed it.
boogie from this show. Thanks for letting me crash for a little bit. The Patriots were depressing the hell out of me. I gotta rest the pipes up for some hardcore Patriots bashing. That the chat
Oh
is gonna be
man,
the chat's gonna be ugly.
I'm
Yes,
gonna
it
check that
is.
out on the way
That's
home.
a tough season.
I'm
I'm
tuning
not
in.
ready for it. The question for Patriots I'll ask is whether or not, and I'll ask anybody here who's watching who might join us later, is something I'm going to talk about with Evan, whether or not any progress was made this year. Do you feel that this team's arrow is pointing up? I know they made the playoffs, but it's hard to feel good about the way things went here, especially when you see the level of some of the other teams who are going to go far in the postseason and how far away you are from those teams. So we'll talk a little bit about that, but I'll let you guys continue the good vibes with the Celtics and their win.
You know
Okay,
what we're
so
gonna talk about, John?
Good night, Jeff.
Now that I'm in charge, we're doing trades. We're gonna talk a
yeah,
little trade deadline a couple weeks out.
you can Schroeder bash all you want. All right.
No,
Yeah,
I
let's
think
see. Let's
I
hear
think
your best Schroeder deal.
Now that I'm gone, you guys can boogie, but I'm out. I'll talk to you guys later.
All right,
Enjoy,
man.
have fun the rest of the show. Thanks everybody.
thanks, John. Yeah, fourth quarter, 130 offensive rating, 126 defensive rating. That's a good step for this group. Now, I'm off this game. Good win. You needed it. It would have been a disastrous loss if they blew it. It's still, and I'm glad Sherrod kind of talked to Brad a little bit before the game about what they're thinking here. And I'm sure Brad didn't say too much. You know how Brad is, but I do wonder where his mind's at, because something's got to change here in my mind, Sherrod. Like, this mix isn't great. The shooting's brutal. They got to start to have some long-term direction here in terms of
Short and
thinking.
long term. Yeah. I mean, the one thing that we talked about that we're kind of both on the same page with is that the way this team is played has added a different kind of wrinkle to the whole conversations you have with other teams about your players and their players. Because, typically when a trade deadline is coming up, you're either playing really well and you're just trying to tweak something here or there, or your team sucks ass and you're just trying to just everyone who's on your roster is up for grabs. And then you've got the Celtics right now where they're in that middle of the pack where you have games like this where they look really great. And then you have other games where they look like trash. And so it's like, do we need more time to develop the guys that we have, or do I need to pull the trigger and get what I can for the assets I have? Brad is still processing all that. There's no doubt about that.
You have tax restrictions too, to some
And
degree,
and
which
there's
is
right,
tricky.
and that's the other thing too, Bobby, as you pointed out. I mean, there's short-term gains, long-term gains, and then the financial gains. And
Mm-hmm.
all three of those things have this tendency to conspire against one another, to where you're probably going to do something that is going to help in one or two of those buckets but hurt you in another. And so he's still trying to figure out what direction to go, because again, this team, it's hard to figure out exactly what they need to do going forward, because there's some things that they do well on some nights and some things they do not so well on other nights. It's just like they don't have an identity, and it makes it difficult to figure out exactly what you need to do to improve the roster when you really don't know what the hell your roster can do consistently.
But
So
let me ask you three questions, Josue, and you can answer them quickly. You don't have to
Damn,
speculate too
Bobby.
much on all these.
All right.
But are you keeping Marcus Smart? Are you keeping your picks? And are you keeping, let's say, Richardson?
Ooh, that's a good question. Well, it depends on how big we're talking, right? Like a deal for a guy who's going to be a rotational player
Or
who can
forget Richardson, the
who
young
you can
guys.
rely on.
They're the third one.
Well, I was going to say Richardson could be gone, or you're going to see. Wait, who's the other guy you said before?
Let's go Smart, picks, and the young guys.
Right. Or it could be someone like Smart, who I think if that's the case, then it has to be a rotational player / maybe a starter. I'm not quite sure the Celtics do that, though. I don't know. I'm not saying Smart is set in stone going to be with this team for the next 2 or 3 years, but I don't know if they're going to jump the gun that quickly. So it'll be interesting to see. Like I think you'll see something that you'll see the Celtics part ways with one of these young guys. Like they have to start making those decisions now. And I think when you look forward, to guys like Pritchard and Grant Williams, I think there's a good chance that those two guys are sort of part of the future, so to speak. But what about the other ones? Like Romeo and Neesmith? I think they have to make decisions on those guys. In terms of trading picks, I'm against that because the Celtics, that bag is getting smaller and smaller, and you just never know when you might need something like that for a bigger deal, for someone that could completely change your team, and you don't want to end up short in that kind of deal when you don't really have the sexiest draft picks to begin with. So I would like to see them hold on to those, but trying to improve this roster by adding a shooter or a 3-and-D guy, I still think it should be part of the plan for these, going into the trade deadline. Not an
Here's the
all-star, so to
tricky
speak.
thing.
But it has to be a weapon that these guys can use. Otherwise, you might as well just pick from the waiver wire and keep it moving from there. I think that would be worst case scenario.
It'll be something very small if they don't extend themselves in some way, and that's either Smart. It could be Rob. I think that's less and less likely the way his contract's set up and the way he's
I
playing
don't
right
think
now,
it's Rob.
frankly.
I think Rob stays, but yeah.
But yeah, you start if you want to keep Smart, you want to keep the picks, you want to keep Rob. Like you start protecting more and more things here. That's a pretty straight path to nothing happening here. And they're already like, even if you did include Smart and a pick, and like I think Rob's probably becoming a bigger and bigger asset for you, but you're already at a disadvantage, I think, in this trade market because everybody's thinking Simmons, right, Sherrod? Like that's where all the assets are kind of lining up. That's where the teams that are going to be active to me are looking.
Yeah, but you know what though? I mean, you're right. That's exactly where most teams are looking for, which is why if you're the Celtics, you don't go there because that's where everyone is at. I think if you're the Boston Celtics, you need to make a decision as to whether or not you're going to make a deal that's going to help you short term right now, or not so short term like next season. I mean, one person I think that is certainly available, but probably can't help you now, but might be able to help you next year with a more team-friendly deal is a guy like T.J. Warren in Indiana, who hasn't played this year. He's got the stress foot fracture, but his money and Marcus Smart's money, they align fairly close with one another. And T.J. Warren is a guy that he has a very clear and undeniable skill.
That's where the tax comes into play, though.
Yeah.
He's a free agent.
Exactly. So I mean, that's a guy that is in the last year of his deal, a guy that has a very clear skill set that you could use, and I think would be open to the idea of becoming a part of a team like the Boston Celtics. And you have the potential, because he's in the last year of his deal now, the potential to maybe re-sign him for less next year, because again, he'll be trying to re-up his value. He will be basically similar to Schroeder from the standpoint of he will be coming to Boston with hopes of playing well enough to get a bigger deal down the road. So you might be able to get him on a 1-year deal. I think you'd have to pay certainly more than you paid Schroeder, but he will be worth it. Because again, he's got such a great feel for scoring the ball. And as much as I thought he was an easy pass defensively for most of his time in the NBA, I've spent the last couple of weeks just kind of looking back a little bit closer at his numbers defensively. And he hasn't been that bad. And I talked to some people in Indiana about him. And, they were trying to convince me last year, or not the year before, I think it was last year, that he wasn't as bad defensively as he had been characterized as being. And I'm still a little bit indifferent about that. I still think he's not a very good defender, but he's such an elite scorer that you can kind of, he's, to me, in many ways, in many respects, he's like a better offensive version of Jabari Parker. Someone who can score but isn't the greatest defender in the world.
Here's the tricky thing about him. Go ahead, Josue.
No. I'm saying damn because this guy is making noise. Sorry.
I was going to say, the tricky thing about him is the unrestricted free agency. You're going to kind of need some wink deal there that he's going to be involved long term because you have to give up something for him, right? Like Indiana likes him. He's a guy that they want to keep around. He's frankly in the Athletic said that he's willing to stay there. He's not even looking to leave. So potentially, if he does end up settling down in Boston, maybe that's a place that he looks to establish the rest of his career after that.
Remember, Kemba Walker didn't want to leave Charlotte.
Yeah.
And they knew exactly what it was going to take to keep him there in Charlotte, and they were just like, "No, we're good."
I'm for it. I like the idea because he's a guy who in the bubble was 30 points a game.
Oh my God, he was so good, and it drove me nuts because I was hoping he wouldn't be that good, so people would just kind of still sleep on him because He's such a. I've been a big fan of his all the way back to when he was at North Carolina State.
I
Um,
like it. Yeah, because it's under the radar.
yeah,
Well,
and
those are the
again,
kind of
everyone
players you
is
have to
looking
get.
at Ben Simmons, and that can be one of those like low key deals that you look back on, 2, 3, 4 months after the deal and be like, damn, that was a really smart deal.
Mhm.
You know.
You
So
want to get ahead on the crowd because there's guys everyone's talking about now, like Tyrese Halliburton and other breakout guys in the league now. Miles Bridges has become an amazing player. These are guys who a year or two ago, if you got ahead and were like, let's really take a stab at that guy and go all in and make an aggressive offer for him, you might have been able to get one of those guys just because they weren't stars yet. But you wait a little too long, and all of a sudden, DeJounte Murray, who everybody loves in the chat here, is untouchable, I think. I don't think there's an offer you can
Yeah,
make San
and so is
Antonio that can
Jalen
get him.
Brunson, especially 'cause talking about names that are
He's
being
getting
mentioned in
there
the comment
too.
section. Yeah,
Yeah. I think Dallas looks at
Dallas
offers
is
for
nice.
him and are like, we'll keep him.
Yeah,
Like teams like their own guys. You have to get into a pretty unique circumstance to really get a team off a guy, and you have to be pretty early and have some foresight. That's my question on Brad. Like, is he gonna make some risky moves here? Is he gonna play it safe and kind of keep everything together here, which I think is the worst possible thing they can do because even at their height right now, they're a 7 or 8 seed in the East, and you're going to play Brooklyn and Milwaukee and those type of teams every year round one. And even if you really reach your ceiling and catch a break there, you're not going anywhere. So you have to be pretty aggressive and have some foresight right now to change this roster. And I like an idea like Warren because he could be the third wing next to Brown and Tatum for years to come. The problem is you're going to give up Smart for him. That's probably where you
it
start,
would take
right? Give a
that. I mean,
pick.
yeah. I mean, I think that's where you have to look if you're the Celtics. And again, it's a heavy price to pay because Marcus is such an important part of this team. But you've got to do something different. You have to you have to get this team charting on a course that's different than the direction they're on now. And his contract is in that sweet spot where you
It
could
is.
potentially move that and get something of decent value. Whereas, I don't think you're going to get a player with the kind of proven body of work that a Rob Williams has and the kind of upside that he provides if you were to trade him, unless you put some deal together and get some guy like Carl Anthony Towns or Anthony Davis or someone like that. Then that's a different story altogether. But players in their early to mid 20s with his type of potential, teams aren't trading those guys.
Yeah, the tricky spot you're in too is if Smart's really the guy you're going to look to move. You kind of see the last night or two here how much they miss him as a point guard, as a defensive organizer, and that's tough to
Absolutely.
replace if you give him up for a wing. You need shooting, you need another wing right now, but you also need a point guard. So needing those two things kind of puts you in a tough spot here. I know you like Buddy Hield,
I was
Josue.
just
That's where
about
I'm going
to
to go
say,
next.
when it comes to shooting, which guy I like for this team.
I'm very, very, very interested in what
Like that's
Sacramento
the
is going
type
to
of guy
do.
who the Kings will say, okay, we'll part ways with this guy for less than we would 2 years ago. You know what I mean? Someone who's been in the league for a bit, and the Kings are sort of stuck right now and trying to restructure this roster, and they're gonna be willing to sell someone like Buddy Hield for a lower price than they would have a couple of years ago. Like I said,
So I sent the group a trade that I think makes perfect sense. I think it's Heald, Barnes, Fox for Simmons and Harris. Now that Philly's looking to move Harris too. That's kind of the slam dunk move, I think, for Philly at this point in terms of what's out there to hold the line because they could end up moving Fox later if they need to for Lillard or whatever they got to do there if they want to make a second move off of that. So I think that's a move that makes a ton of sense for both teams. But if Philly keeps Simmons and they don't view that as enough and Sacramento strikes out there, I'm interested if you could pick off Heald or Barnes for something cheap. They're
yeah,
big contract. That team's salary is huge and they're a 10 seed. They can probably keep competing with that guy, Chimzi Matu. He's kind of their breakout guy on the wing right
that's
now.
right.
So,
Yeah.
could you just take Heald salary here? The tricky thing is you're kind of tax restricted right now. And I know Sherrod's going to move on and do some other things there at the Garden. Appreciate his time, but
Yeah,
I more and more. I go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, he sort of falls in that same category, like Sherrod was talking about, right? Because his contract,
Undervalued.
yeah, well, undervalued, and with the last year of that contract, he's making 18 million, which is for the 23-24 season. So you got a couple of years to sort of try to make this thing work. And you got someone that can spread the floor. He can also defend a bit. I don't know what these comments are talking about 40. Man, my man's not even 30 yet. He's 27 years old, or he's turning 28 rather. But he's on the I think I said that a month ago.
He
He's
feels so old though, Josue, doesn't
he's
he?
on the right side of 30. Okay, it's not bad. And again, he checks that box of being a consistent threat from outside. Yeah, I know he's having a bit of a down year, but that falls in the Celtics' favor. That's how they essentially landed a 3-and-D guy like Josh Richardson, in my opinion, right? I mean, if Josh Richardson was who he was a couple of years ago, or if he had maintained somewhere near that, I'm not quite sure the Celtics would be able to sign him, because there would be other suitors out there, So and look what he's been able to do, right? He's having a career year from behind the 3-point arc, which is something that the Celtics were hoping would happen. Maybe something similar happens with someone like Buddy Hield, who hasn't been able to sort of prove himself on that stage yet, right? That postseason stage. And granted, the Celtics may not be going so far in that stage this season, but he could be a vital piece for your near future for the next couple of seasons.
If they just swap out some of the young guys on the roster, I'm okay with that, because it's doing something. It's a forward-thinking move.
I don't know if you remember my package deal, but this is again, this will be. It's not a slam dunk. The Kings will have to weigh out their options here. And I know earlier I talked about I wouldn't like to see the Celtics trade picks, but for this deal, this is the exception, and a lot of that has to do with the fact that I don't have Marcus in it. And again, it's a tough sell.
100%. You can't trade Smart for a guy like that.
Right, you can't. But the sell on this trade is one, the future first. It would be two, someone like Aaron Nesmith, who they could sort of, they're not completely committed.
And they like Nesmith.
They have a year to work with him, and they like Nesmith, and he can be sort of that Buddy Hield-ish player that could replace, who Buddy Hield was, I guess, 4 or 5 years ago. And then you have, Richardson and Juan, Juancho, Hernan Gomez, just to make contract match. But look, if you're the Kings, that all that money will clear after next season. So you're not going to be big players this upcoming summer, but next summer you're a big player. You have a couple of guys that you can decide whether you want to keep them or not, and you have a future first round pick. I mean, for someone like Buddy Hield right now in the stage of his career, that's not a terrible trade off, especially when you still have other pieces that you could sell off or keep part of your future in De'Aaron Fox and Barnes and Harrison Barnes.
Yeah, and I think he's attainable. It's big money over the next couple of years. He is pushing 30. They got to shake it up there. I'm not sure Nesmith, Romeo, and Juancho, let's say, gets it done. You throw a first in there, maybe they start thinking about it a little more. But it is the right idea, I think. Stack the salaries, send out as many guys. Juancho, I think, is the centerpiece of this, and try to consolidate part of your roster into a guy you can actually use there. Because think of this bench right now, Josue. They have 10 guys they just don't use. Right. So try to consolidate some of that money, because Juancho's disappearing after this year. You got to take advantage of that now. You certainly have a guy like Richardson who could help out in some sort of deal. You have a lot of salary flexibility right now. I was talking to someone about this on Twitter. They don't have great value contracts. They don't have players that teams really want, but they can make a lot of different kind of deals just based on the fact that they have their own pick and they have so many salaries you can stack. So you can very easily, if you go to the trade machine, just stack up money and match Hield. And that might be all it takes if the Kings are just looking to get off that deal.
Yeah, that's what got Hernan Gomez into this deal. Yeah.
So that's what you got to look to do if you're Brad at this deadline. That's how you improve your team. I don't think you can give up Smart for a wing. You lose so much at point guard and on defense.
No, I wouldn't. It's just, especially someone like Hield, you wouldn't. No, that's a huge gamble.
And even Grant, who I love, Harrison Barnes, who I love, I'm not sending out Smart for those guys, because then you're just, I think, screwed at point guard. You can hold the line with Schroeder for a year, but when he leaves, you're really in trouble there. For now, unless there's a big deal that you have a chance to do that brings in a third star, and you send out all your future picks or whatever it is, that's where I think Smart gets involved. In terms of just improving the edges of the roster, unless you find a young point guard like Brunson, someone we've talked about, that you can swap Smart out for, a little bit more of an offensive mindset than a defensive one, that's where you maybe trade Smart too. But I know a lot of people want to see Smart gone. You got to be smart with it, because listen, he's not the most valuable guy in the world, but he's pretty valuable to use still, and just dumping him doesn't solve anything. A lot of people are like, get rid of Smart. I think you have to get something back for him.
That's always my clapback. For who? when you have someone in mind and it works out and you can go through it, and find out the details and make sure that it clears and approves on the trade machine, then we can talk. But yeah, Bob, that's a good point. Like, no one is giving me a realistic option, I should say, because people have given me some ridiculous options which they don't even take seriously, and then they always end it with, I don't know, just get rid of them. And I'm like, well, what kind of business is that? Like, that's not.
All right, Patriots press pass starting right now. The post game show on that disaster in Buffalo. I got a graphic here somewhere. They're getting on board. So I'm not even gonna bring it up. Go CLNS Media. Patriots
I'm tuning
press
in on my way
pass.
home. This is gonna be good.
Evan Lazar is going live with John Zanish right now, so bring your Patriots gripes over there. We are back on Monday for a 12:30 game. Keep that in mind on MLK Day. It's a 12:30 tip-off, Pelicans and Celtics. I'm Bobby Manning. He's Josue Pavon. We will see you then.